or frolicking in the farmyard, for it was a farm now, as well as a tavern. More small Joes and small Dollies than could be easily counted. It was not a very long time before these appearances ensued, but it was a very long time before Joe looked 5 years older, or Dolly either, or the locksmith either, or his wife either, for cheerfulness and content are great beautifiers, and are famous preservers of youthful looks, depend upon it. It was a long time, too, before there was such a country inn as the Maypole in all England. Indeed, it is a great question whether there has ever been such another to this hour, or ever will be. It was a long time, too, for never, as the proverb says, is a long day, before they forgot to have an interest in wounded soldiers at the Maypole, or before Joe omitted to refresh them for the sake of his old campaign, or before the sergeant left off looking in there now and then, or before they fatigued themselves or each other by talking on these occasions of battles and sieges, and hard weather and hard service, and 1,000 things belonging to a soldier's life. As to the great silver snuff-box which the king sent Joe with his own hand because of his conduct in the riots, what guest ever went to the Maypole without putting finger and thumb into that box and taking a great pinch, though he had never taken a pinch of snuff before, and almost sneezed himself into convulsions even then? As to the purple-faced vintner, where is the man who lived in those times and never saw him at the Maypole? To all appearance as much at home in the best room as if he lived there. And as to the feastings, and christenings, and revellings at Christmas, and celebrations of birthdays, wedding days, and all manner of days, both at the Maypole and the Golden Key, if they are not notorious, what facts are? Mr. Willet the elder, having been by some extraordinary means possessed with the idea that Joe wanted to be married, and that it would be well for him, his father, to retire into private life, and enable him to live in comfort, took up his abode in a small cottage at Chigwell, where they widened and enlarged the fireplace for him, hung up the boiler, and furthermore planted in the little garden outside the front door a fictitious Maypole, so that he was quite at home directly. To this, his new habitation, Tom Cobb, Phil Parkes, and Solomon Daisy went regularly every night, and in the chimney corner they all four quaffed and smoked and prosed and dozed, as they had done of old. It being accidentally discovered after a short time that Mr. Willet still appeared to consider himself a landlord by profession, Joe provided him with a slate, upon which the old man regularly scored up vast accounts for meat, drink, and tobacco. As he grew older, this passion increased upon him, and it became his delight to chalk against the name of each of his cronies a sum of enormous magnitude and impossible to be paid, and such was his secret joy in these entries that he would be perpetually seen going behind the door to look at them, and coming forth again suffused with the liveliest satisfaction. He never recovered the surprise the rioters had given him, and remained in the same mental condition down to the last moment of his life. It was like to have been brought to a speedy termination by the first sight of his first grandchild, which appeared to fill him with the belief that some alarming miracle had happened to Joe. Being promptly blooded, however, by a skilful surgeon, he rallied, and although the doctors all agreed on his being attacked with symptoms of apoplexy 6 months afterwards, that he ought to die, and took it very ill that he did not, he remained alive, possibly on account of his constitutional slowness, for nearly 7 years more, when he was one morning found speechless in his bed. He lay in this state, free from all tokens of uneasiness, for a whole week, when he was suddenly restored to consciousness by hearing the nurse whisper in his son's ear that he was going. "I'm a-going, Joseph," said Mr. Willet, turning round upon the instant, "to the Salwanners," and immediately gave up the ghost. He left a large sum of money behind him, even more than he was supposed to have been worth, although the neighbours, according to the custom of mankind in calculating the wealth that other people ought to have saved, had estimated his property in good round numbers. Joe inherited the whole, so that he became a man of great consequence in those parts, and was perfectly independent. Some time elapsed before Barnaby got the better of the shock he had sustained, or regained his old health and gaiety. But he recovered by degrees, and although he could never separate his condemnation and escape from the idea of a terrific dream, he became in other respects more rational. Dating from the time of his recovery, he had a better memory and greater steadiness of purpose, but a dark cloud overhung his whole previous existence and never cleared away. He was not the less happy for this, for his love of freedom and interest in all that moved or grew, or had its being in the elements, remained to him unimpaired. He lived with his mother on the Maypole farm, tending the poultry and the cattle, working in a garden of his own, and helping everywhere. He was known to every bird and beast about the place, and had a name for every one. Never was there a lighter-hearted husbandman, a creature more popular with young and old, a blither or more happy soul than Barnaby, and though he was free to ramble where he would, he never quitted her, but was for evermore her stay and comfort. It was remarkable that although he had that dim sense of the past, he sought out Hugh's dog, and took him under his care, and that he never could be tempted into London. When the riots were many years old, and Edward and his wife came back to England with a family almost as numerous as Dolly's, and one day appeared at the Maypole porch, he knew them instantly, and wept and leaped for joy. But neither to visit them, nor on any other pretence, no matter how full of promise and enjoyment, could he be persuaded to set foot in the streets, nor did he ever conquer this repugnance or look upon the town again. Grip soon recovered his looks, and became as glossy and sleek as ever. But he was profoundly silent. Whether he had forgotten the art of polite conversation in Newgate, or had made a vow in those troubled times to forego for a period the display of his accomplishments, is matter of uncertainty, but certain it is that for a whole year he never indulged in any other sound than a grave decorous croak. At the expiration of that term, the morning being very bright and sunny, he was heard to address himself to the horses in the stable upon the subject of the kettle so often mentioned in these pages, and before the witness who overheard him could run into the house with the intelligence, and add to it upon his solemn affirmation the statement that he had heard him laugh, the bird himself advanced with fantastic steps to the very door of the bar, and there cried, "I'm a devil, I'm a devil, I'm a devil," with extraordinary rapture. From that period, although he was supposed to be much affected by the death of Mr. Willet senior, he constantly practised and improved himself in the vulgar tongue, and as he was a mere infant for a raven when Barnaby was grey, he has very probably gone on talking to the present time. End of Chapter 81. End of Barnaby Rudge by Charles Dickens. Recording by Deborah Lynn.